So you want to learn how to use the OpenAI API because you're interested in learning how to generate text, perhaps create your own images, generate your own videos, maybe transcribe audio or do your own text-to-speech from within your own code. Well, look no further. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get started with the OpenAI API so you can achieve all of this. I'm going to cover what an API is, how your OpenAI API account is managed and organized, setting up your first API key, funding your account, getting started with setting up a coding environment, writing some basic code to get you started. So let's get into it. What is an API? An API is an application programming interface, and it allows different software systems to communicate. So in plain English, what that means is you can write some code on your laptop, and if you require a task which involves some expertise that you don't have, or perhaps some infrastructure you don't have, instead of coding it yourself and buying expensive equipment, you can send a request to someone else's servers who have already coded up what you need. You can get a response and then use that in your own code. So, in the context of using the OpenAI API, you might be writing some code at home on your own laptop or PC, and you want to use an AI model. But unlike OpenAI, you don't have access to massive data centers. You don't have the expertise to do your own machine learning. You don't have the data required to train such models. You don't have the power and energy to power these really complex and sophisticated servers. So it's just easier to make a request to OpenAI, who does have all of this infrastructure, get them to process a request on your behalf and send it back to you. That's all an API is. And here's a little schematic. You write your own code, you send a request to OpenAI, which includes the API key. The server receives your request, it checks your API key, and if your API key is valid, then it sends a response back to you containing the information you need. If it's not valid, it just doesn't process your request. And sometimes it will send, in fact, nearly all the time, it will send a response back to you saying invalid request. And of course, there's many examples of APIs. So outside of the OpenAI API, which I'm sure you are very much aware of, there are other APIs you can use. For example, Google's APIs, you can access their maps data and directions from outside Google Maps, inside your own code, translate YouTube data, Gmail. Honestly, there's an API for nearly everything if you look for a provider. But for the context of this tutorial, of course, we're focusing on OpenAI. So the next step naturally is setting up an OpenAI API account. So you want to follow this link. I'll include it in the description. So you want to go to platform.openai.com, or you can either just search up OpenAI API and log in here. Now, I'm not going to show you how to create your account because it is straightforward. And also, if I did walk you through it here on video, I would be exposing my own personal information. So I'm just not going to do that. However, it's straightforward. And once you've done that, you'll end up on a page like this. And this is your OpenAI API dashboard or homepage. Now, it's important to understand how your account is structured. So you have your account. Underneath your account, you have organizations and projects and API keys. So when you create your account, underneath your account, you can create different organizations. And you fund your account, you put money into your account at the level of the organization. So you don't say put $100 in your account, which is then used up amongst your projects as and when you use them. What you do, you create different organizations associated with your account and you fund the organizations. So I might say organization A has $100 to use, and whenever I use an API key under a project created under the organization A, money is taken from organization A, but not from B. So for example, I could say organization B has $50. The reason why it's organized like this is because you might have different clients, you might have different personal projects, It's just a way of keeping track of who's paying and how much usage each organization is getting out of their projects and API keys. So yes, as mentioned, under different organizations, then you can create different projects and containing different API keys. And when you use an API key related to its relevant project, you can see how much usage each project is getting, and that project is funded from the organization it belongs to. I hope that makes sense. It'll make more sense now when I go through it on the dashboard. So I have my account up here on the top right. Under my account, I can create different organizations, and you can view your organizations here on the top left-hand side. So I think by default, you have an organization with like your account name. I've created another one called Test. This is where I'm doing all my tutorials. So when I've selected this organization, you can see that I funded it here. However, if I was to switch to my other organization associated with my account, here you can see when it loads that there are no credits associated with this organization. So let me just switch back to my test organization. So then just to the right of the organization menu bar, you can click on the project menu bar and you can create a new project. By default, there is always a default project when you create a new organization. Click here if you want to create a new project and name it. For now, I'm going to be working under this tutorials project under my test organization for the purpose of this video and other tutorials to come. Great. So once you've created your account, used the organization that you want to use and created a new organization, or just used the default one, and either created a new project or again just used the default project, you can add credits to your account. So again, I'm not going to show you how to do this because it's straightforward and I'd be exposing personal bank card information, which I definitely don't want to do. But all you need to know is that you will click on this and then you'll be taken to a page where you can configure the costs of your account. Now, I believe there's a few ways to do this. So you can either just add funds to your account and when they're used up, you'll have to manually top up your account. Or you can set in hard or soft limits. So a soft limit might warn you when you drop below a certain threshold. So I think I've set mine to $5. So when there's less than $5 credits within this organization, it'll send me an email telling me that I need to top up. You can configure it how you want, but that's how it's done. This is where you add your costs, and it's very cheap to run. It costs a few pence per call, depending on what you're doing. Okay, great. So now you've created your account, you created your organization, you created a project, you funded your organization within your account. Now you can create an API key. So you can do that by clicking here, Create API Key, or either going to the left-hand vertical menu and clicking on API keys here. I'm going to click here on Create API Key in the top right-hand corner. Now I can give my API key a name. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to call it API Tutorial, oh man, if I can spell, tutorial. And it belongs to the project tutorials. I can select there. And now permissions, I always set it to all. I believe permissions just define what this key can and can't access. If you're just getting started, it's easier to keep it on all. And then when you're ready, create secret key. Now it's going to generate a key for you. You're going to want to copy this and save it somewhere safe in a TXT file or something. The reason why you want to do that is because once I click done here, I won't be able to access this again. So I need to store it somewhere. So I'm going to click copy. I'm going to save it somewhere safe. Click done. And now I'm ready to go. So we're going to get into coding a quick example. I'm going to show you how to set up an environment, how to use your API key safely, because you can go wrong with it. So let's get straight into it. So before we get coding, we need to create an environment. So to help explain the concept, I've created this schematic here. So you have your computer and you're going to create different projects in different folders. Now, in Python, you can install things that are known as dependencies. A dependency is like a library of tools that you can use within your own code. So for example, there are libraries such as SciPy or NumPy, and let's say you wanted to use the trigonometric function sine using NumPy. So the reason why you would use NumPy is because someone has already gone to the difficulty of coding a mathematical function to approximate a sine value. However, you might not want to do that. So you just use the NumPy library and use some code that someone else has already created. That's kind of what a dependency is like. Now the problem is sometimes dependencies can conflict with each other. So you might install a library which only works if it uses an older version of another library. And then you can get dependency conflicts, which just breaks your environment. So you want to create separate environments, because if you just install everything onto your vanilla Python environment, your default Python environment, and use that across all projects, eventually it will become a mess and it will stop working. So you want to keep things organized, you want to keep things separately. So you're going to want to create different projects, and then within these project folders, you create new environments with their specific dependencies or tools or library tools from different libraries specific to that project. And this just ensures that in the long run, you don't get different scripts conflicting with each other because you've kept it all separated. Okay, now I'm going to show you the steps to set up your environment. So I'm working on a Linux-based machine, so the commands are going to look slightly different, but the overall process is the same. At the end of the video, I'm going to include a file containing also the commands for Windows, so don't worry. So you want to create a project folder and navigate to that folder. Obviously yours will be empty. I've just included these two files here for the sake of this video. So this one is a Python script that we're just going to use straight away. I've already written it. And this one, I've just included some commands just to speed up the environment setup process. Because if you create lots of environments because you're a hobbyist or you work for other people, I've just created a list of commands that I commonly use. So I'm going to use them here. So here's my environment setup commands. So you want to open up a new terminal and you want to copy this directory path. Then you just want to type cd and then paste the directory path after that command. Hit enter. What that has done, it's now told my computer that for all subsequent commands, execute them inside this folder. Great. So now we're going to create our environment. So to do that, type python 3-m venv, virtual environment that stands for. And then what most people do, they just type env. Basically that is the name of your environment. So most people just name their environment environment. I personally prefer to give my environment a name. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to name it tutorial. The reason why I like to do that is because when I'm operating within a code interpreter, such as Visual Studio Code, you might be working in Anaconda, I can clearly see which environment I currently have activated. So I like to give my environments names. Whereas if you call all of your environments environment, like some people do, I find it a little harder to tell which environment you actually have loaded up. So I prefer to name it, but that's just my personal preference. You can do what you want. So I'm going to hit enter there. And as you can see, a new folder has been created. Within that folder contains all the environment setup or configuration files. Great. So now that we've created our environment, we still need to activate it. What do I call it? Tutorial. So to do that, type source and then the name of your environment. I've just called mine tutorial /bin/activate. Great. Now I know my environment is activated because I can see the name of my environment here. So now all commands that I run are been run with that environment active. So now we can install our dependencies. To get started, we're going to need OpenAI. So type in pip install OpenAI, all lowercase, hit enter. As you can see, it's now installing OpenAI. Now that's done, we also want to type in pip install python.env. This is a Python library that allows us to load in our API key without having to expose it in the code. So the reason why you'd want this is because some people might make the mistake of hard coding their API key into their Python script. And then they go on and share that Python script on a platform like GitHub, for example. So then anyone can download their Python script and their API key is there for everyone to see. So then complete strangers on the internet can then use your API key to basically spend your money generating things. So to avoid that, we install the .env library, and then we can define our API key from outside of the code. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So in your project folder, you're going to want to create a new file. It's going to be a .env file. Because I'm on Linux, I can just call it .env, and it will configure the file type to be a .environment file type. If you're on Windows and you're using something like Notepad, you're going to have to save it as a .env file, not a .txt file. There we go. So I created my env file. I'm going to open it, and in all caps, I'm going to type OpenAI underscore API underscore key equals. And then I'm going to paste in my OpenAI API key. Great. So now my API key is defined in this file here, not in my Python script. And my Python script will load the information from this file. Let's go back to the terminal. Now I just need to launch my code interpreter. So depending on what you use, the command will be different. I use Visual Studio Code. So here I just need to type in code, and that's going to launch Visual Studio Code. Now here I've already written some code. Well, I say written, I did just copy and paste it from the OpenAI API documentation just to prove that this setup process has worked. As you can see down here, the correct environment is loaded. So I did have to modify this code slightly. I had to add this line here from .env, import load.env. That's basically importing that library that we installed for our environment into the code, so the code knows to use it. And then I loaded this, then I wrote this code here, load.env. That basically loads up the API key from that .env file that we made. Great. So I can change this prompt here, write a poem. What should we write a poem about? I don't know. Let's write a poem about France. About France. There we go. And then we can run our code. And so then we can go and hit run, which I just did. And there we go. It's written a poem about France. So there we go. That's how to get set up with the API. Now this tutorial was only supposed to show you how to set up your API account and getting started. In subsequent tutorials, I'm going to go more into depth into using and writing code with these API keys. So I'm not going to go into depth here about how this code works. It's just to prove that I've successfully set up the API service. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. If you liked that tutorial, do subscribe, leave a comment if there was anything you didn't understand, or leave a comment if you would like to see a tutorial in the future on a specific topic. Also, I am creating a community for people who are looking to get started in learning how to code and use these AI API models. We're going to be looking at way more than just OpenAI's models. We're going to be looking at Claude and Gemini and Grok and video generation. There's so much we can do with these tools. So if that sounds like something you're interested in and you want to learn how to use these tools within your own applications, then join my school community, link in the description. It may be a bit quiet
at the time of this video, as I have just launched it. But it's going to be a great place for like-minded people to come together, to learn off each other, and to understand this space a bit better. So if that sounds like it's for you, also follow that link below, and I'll see you in the next video.